Hello everyone, this is Shalain Prasad from Terracotta Product Management. I'm here today to talk about how to set up your Terracotta DB cluster using Cluster Tool. As you can see on my screen, I have already set up 4 command windows to start up the servers. This is a tcconfig file, one of the tcconfig file for Stripe 1, which has 2 nodes, server 1 and server 2, running on port 9410 and 9411. I'm sorry, it's server 11 and server 12. Let's not waste time and let's quickly get started. In starting these 4 nodes, I will have a similar config file for Stripe 2 which runs on 2.1 and 2.2, 9421 and 9420. tcserver.bat -f, give a path to your config file. So my configuration file was server tcconfig stripe 1, and then specify the node -n server 11 to start it as an active. Let's do the same thing for the Stripe. So we specify the same config file and start the second node. Of course, this is going to start as a passive because the active coordinator of this Stripe has already started as node 11. So -12. This will start as a passive standby. Let's go ahead and get started. Start the other 2 nodes on Stripe 2. I'm going to use a different config file here, please note. Because it's Stripe 2, I'm going to use tcconfig stripe2.xml, and my node name here in this configuration is server 2.1, which is going to start now as an active coordinator, and the 2.2 is going to start as a passive standby. I have already started Terracotta Management Console for you in the background so that we don't have to wait for the TMS TMC to start. The default port for there you go, it started as a passive. The default port for your TMC is 9480. As you can see, I'm trying to if you don't specify the cluster URL port, it will by default look for a node running on 9410, which I had, but still it was not able to connect because it is saying the cluster name was null. Please make sure you have properly configured Terracotta servers or server using Cluster Tool. I want to say something here which is very important, that even if you have a single node, single Stripe, you still need to run your Cluster Tool in order to make sure that that particular node has been validated against your license file and it has a cluster state defined. Without doing so, you wouldn't be able to use any of the APIs to create your cache managers or your data sets or any of the server-side entities. So we're going to go ahead and use Cluster Tool now to create a cluster for our 4-node 2-stripe cluster which we just started. There you go. So if you remember from my previous video on installation of Terracotta DB, there is a cluster tool which gets installed. There's a folder called cluster tool which gets installed, created in tools directory, and inside bin you have a command called clustertool.bat. Just click enter and you will get a help what this command can do. It has a lot of options. You can do configuration of your cluster, reconfiguration, you can take state dump, you can do IP whitelist, and some more stuff. I'm going to cover that in a separate video shortly. So we are here to configure our cluster. So as you can see under the configuration, you have 2 options: configure -n cluster name license file tcconfigs, or you can go with all the host and port which you want to cluster in those config files. Obviously, it's easier to just mention the config files and not go and type each and every host name. I'm going to take that easier route. Copy that command, clustertool.bat, paste the command, and I'm going to edit this command right now to suit my current installation. So cluster name, I'm going to give here my cluster. License file, if you remember in the previous video on the installation, if you choose Cluster Tool, by default your license file will be requested to be provided during the installation, and it goes and renamed and saved as license.xml in your Cluster Tool COM directory. You got to point that license file and then point all the configuration file, the tcconfig file, which you want to bring it under one cluster. So in this case, we have used two, and each one has two nodes. So as you can see, I provided tcconfig stripe 1 and tcconfig stripe 2. Please enter, and you will see shortly, should not take long, it will say commands successfully completed. There you go. We have successfully just created the 4 nodes mentioned inside the 2 config file inside one cluster. Let's go ahead and refresh Terracotta Management Console. We're going to go ahead and click Create Connection, leave the default port. You can see my cluster is automatically detected from the cluster tool. Setup, click Next, and there you go. You see our cluster is set up now with 2 nodes, 2 stripe each, 9411, 9410 on one stripe, or 9421 and 20 on another stripe. This is it for today, how to set up your cluster. Thank you so much for watching.